Knock, knock. Who's there?
Hey, it's Daniel.
Hey, Daniel. Welcome in. It's so great to have you here today. Thanks for joining us. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Survived another week. Ready to go.
It's a little bit like that, right? Especially in our
Yep.
in our industry at the moment. Oh man! So thank you so much for jumping in. So why don't we start off our session? A session. Look, I think I'm doing a coaching session already, and I'm
Apparently, yeah.
and I'm talking to somebody. Why don't we start off this podcast episode with finding out a little bit more about you?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So, well, my name is Daniel. You guys already know. I have been in the fitness and wellness space for close to 15 years now. I've been doing a lot of work in the teaching realm, a lot of education. Been doing a lot of work, obviously, personal training and obviously managing as well. I own a business called Only the Strong Personal Training and Fitness Education. We actually have two locations here in the Toronto area. One is in the beaches area, which is southeast Toronto. One is in the Etobicoke area, which is southwest Toronto. So we basically predominantly focus on one-on-one personal training with clientele, as well as fitness education for fitness professionals or just people who are just trying to improve their overall understanding of health and wellness.
Yeah, that's so cool, and what a great offering there of things, Daniel. Just to kind of give the listeners and the viewers a bit of history, I know you through education. That's how we met, because you do work for CamFit Pro as a pro trainer, as well as obviously offering your own education products. So I'm kind of curious to know why you decided to get into the education side, as well as being with clients.
Yeah, it's interesting you ask that. The education side is actually where I started. I worked for one of the biggest corporate fitness facilities in Canada for many, many years, and I kind of started as a personal trainer. I jumped in the management role really quickly. I've worked at a bunch of different locations in that corporation. One of the big things I always recognized is I felt like there was a gap between kind of, and I always say this right now with my business is between good, great, and then elite. And I felt that the gap was there because we weren't really talking about the things that were necessary to be discussed within the industry. And I felt like we were kind of sugarcoating the process, and people weren't getting the totality of what is necessary to actually survive. So not just get in, but like survive and do great things while you're here. And so I started with education as part of that process because I learned a lot through the years working with trainers who had way more experience than me, working with managers, working with physios, ATs, who you name it. And I just started kind of building my way up from there. And I felt that there was such an opportunity to really improve the skill set of people holistically. And so that's kind of where I started and why I thought it was amazing. And that kind of transfers to my business because at Only the Strong, like our whole concept is talking about strength, not just being physical. It's more of a metaphysical. It's more not so much how much you can lift, but it's what you know. I find that there's a sticking point with clients, and sometimes clients will start and then stop and start and then stop. A lot of the times, the reason why they disengage is because they don't really know why they're there. There's no value to them being there. So if you look at some of the best fitness pros you can name, a lot of them give great value in every single session. And so that's what we do at Only the Strong, and that's why education is so important to me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and it's true, right? You only know what you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, if we can up the game on what we're telling people, teaching people, coaching people, then they know an awful lot more. And I think it's not just for the consumer, but the fitness professional as well. And I love that you alluded to that. Having been in fitness management in the past, we know the turnover rate of personal trainers is really high, because you're right, like you come in at this one level, and then it's like you're meant to be over here earning a million bucks a second, whatever. But nobody really talks about this gray
Mm-hmm.
area where you've got to put in the work, you've got to learn the stuff, you have to know how to talk to people, find your niche, and just stick at it for a bit, and then all good things will come to you. So I love that you've identified that middle ground, not just for the fit pro, but also for the consumer, right? Because you're either a newbie or, you said, like, elite. What about that middle kind of funky phase? So, yeah, kudos for you for identifying that and really trying to help people. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you. Absolutely. I agree. And just to kind of double off of something you mentioned there, you talked about the process of work. I think there's a huge opportunity in our industry as professionals and people who are trying to kind of get to the next stage in their life to understand that work is not always a bad thing. I was just having a conversation with a client who's a vice president of one of the big five banks this weekend. And one of the big things that this past weekend they were talking about was that they're finding that people are always trying to jump to that next job or jump to the next tier or jump to the next opportunity without actually putting in the work and the time. And so we have a saying at OTS we talk about, and it basically says the work comes before the check. So I post it all the time on my social media because I think it's important. Like, we got to recognize, like, you don't get paid just for showing up in this industry. That's not what we're looking for, right? You have to put in the investment in order to get what you want to get back. So there's so much opportunity there.
Yeah, sure. It links so heavily to the consistency, and we spoke, kind of mentioned it from a client standpoint, from a professional standpoint, is being consistent, and then being consistent not only in putting those hours in, but then putting in good quality hours. And this is something I always talk to when I talk about coaching, is it's, yes, if you're doing something well, that's great, but how many times have you done that well, and how much have you mastered that, and how many hours have you taken, right? And it takes that, and it is a grind when you start. Like, you get on the floor, and and like you said, right, trainers, sometimes there are trainers out there running maybe not $1 million a second, but hundreds of dollars an hour.
Well, that's what you're promised, right?
Yeah.
It's true, yes.
And I remember that in certifications I took 20 years ago, where it was like, this is the projected amount, and it was probably £50 an hour at that point. And this is like 15 years ago, and I'm like, but not a lot of trainers earning that. However, the ones that have put 10, 15, 20,000 hours of training in and been in there and actually done it and made all the mistakes, but have been consistent in delivering it and upskilling, are the ones that are earning $1 million a second. So important. And I think what it brings me to is that's an important message to professionals, but also, how do you find that message transfers to clients in regards to consistency? And do you find this is a conversation you have a lot with your clients about, because you'll get those clients where they're like, oh, well, I did this and this, and I followed this, and I didn't get my results. Is that something you're coming up with a lot with your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting you mentioned that as well. I think that there's almost a bridge that can be built between those 2 points because, for instance, I was just doing some onboarding with a trainer that we have at our facility today, and I was having this exact same conversation. And we were kind of showing them how the patterns of their efforts can sometimes lead to the disdain of clients or the exit strategies for clients. So I truly believe the number one thing that clients are looking for or need when they come to us is not like weight loss or strength and that stuff. They just need accountability. Like, they're coming to us for accountability. And so it's unfortunate if we don't deliver that level of accountability, because we're never going to get to that point. And so for us, I think one of the ways we deliver that is by having our own personal accountability be just as high quality. So showing up on time, making sure the programming is correct, putting in your effort into the session, remembering the things your clients have actually told you. These are all things that you want to make sure you were doing. And so I find that really does wear off, and it rubs off on the client. So just as a quick example, through talking to another trainer earlier this week who just reached out to me and asked me some advice, one of the things I talked to him about is the fact that when clients are leaving, it's important to recognize that clients don't leave people, right? They leave trainers, right? And that's so important, is like, you have to develop that quality relationship with your clients, because they don't leave you, they leave trainers, they leave facilities, they're not leaving the person. And I'm sure for you guys who have so much experience in the industry, you probably have people who to this day still follow you and are still accountable to the process, even when it's inconvenient, because it's who you are, it's who you represent, your personal accountability, your awareness, your ability to give that extra bit every single day. And I think that's, it really does show why you guys are some of the best at what you do, and why you guys are such a great example for some of the fitness pros in the industry.
Thank you for that. Gosh, I think I blushed. I think I blended into my hair a little bit there.
Like, who are these awesome
people?
This
is great. Keep going. No, but you know what, Daniel? In all seriousness, I've lost count the amount of times like management have asked me to share my magic, my secret sauce. And trainers have asked me this, like, how are you doing such great, sales conversions? How do you get great renewals? How are people following you regardless which freaking country you move to?
Right.
And the answer really is, I'm doing nothing but being me.
Mhm.
And some people are like, what? No, honestly, like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just keeping it real. Like, I'm just being me. But also to your point, I'm consistent. I'm show up on time, and I actually give a shit.
Mhm.
And that's it. That's my secret sauce. And everything else, right? It's just there, right? Like programming, sure, programming is important. But really, if you don't gel with that person and you don't have that connection and they don't want to come and see you, then everything else is not important. I could have the best program, but if I'm late, if I don't care, right, and I don't have a personality, maybe drinking my coffee and picking my nose or looking out the window, I'm not going to have a client for very long at all. So I love that you alluded to that, because it just it just made me feel better about my answer, which was, oh, I'm just me. But it's so true, right?
It's those
People
habits, right?
follow people.
Yeah.
I think that's just perfect what you said, Daniel.
And it also made me think about, I made a post about coaches the other day because I'd seen some stuff that just grated on me a little bit on social media. And
You had a rant.
I had
did
a
you?
rant, yeah.
Okay.
I did it very tactfully in an Instagram reel though.
I've had some of those.
Yeah.
A nice passive aggressive, just
Yeah.
saying, why don't you?
Yes.
Hilarious.
And basically,
Sorry, I interrupted.
No worries. It basically, to paraphrase it, it said that someone's ability to be in good physical shape is not a certification to coach someone else. And why it made me think of that was when you spoke about being a role model. I think sometimes when we're entering, and obviously we're talking about learners coming in and new professionals coming on board, is I think there's a misconception that if you're able to get yourself in good physical shape, be strong, low body fat, whatever, lots of lean muscle mass, whatever it might be, athletic or performing well in your sport, whatever it might be, is those are always seen to be quite an important prerequisite for coaches. However, they're a small bit. And what I was basically saying is, hey, yeah, you know what? This does give you some of the tools, because it does mean that I understand how to track my calories and I know how to lift in the gym successfully or whatever it might be, or train as an athlete. However, that's a very small piece. And the reason I'm saying this and getting to the long-winded point is, when you are a role model, you need to role model your behavior. You need to role model your timekeeping. You need to role model, your focus and how attentive you are to your clients. Like, that's role modeling. The way your personal values is what you should be role modeling, as well as this a little bit over here, which, yes, be in shape, be a bit leaner and a bit stronger than the average person, because that's going to be a good quality as a trainer, and you're going to learn some great skills in the process. So it just made me think about that, and I really love that point that we have to role model all of our values around life, not just keeping fit, staying in shape, and eating well, for example.
I agree. I think that's an excellent point, and I could talk for hours on that point alone, because I actually start a lot of my courses with this, and a lot of students get taken back, but I think it's the best way to start with. The reality is that just because you like fitness doesn't mean you should be a personal trainer. It's really straightforward. And I think that sometimes we get those two conflated. We say, well, I like exercise, I look good, therefore I should just train people. And we don't realize like the actual nuanced approach you need to be a successful fitness professional. And so that's what ends up happening, is you get this onslaught of people who look really good, but don't really care that much about, preparing, as we talked about, time management, increasing their education, staying on top of their education, all of those elements. They don't really care about that stuff. And so they end up kind of flowing in, flowing out, flowing in, flowing out. And what ends up happening is the people who stay, their job is even harder now, because when you meet people, now they have this viewpoint on personal training or personal trainers as being this low-level art form, this thing that's like no big deal. And to take it a step further, not to be too controversial, it's no surprise that the fitness and health world was one of the first worlds to disappear when the pandemic and all the closures happened, right? Because of the hierarchy of interest or personal, or I guess personal accountability to the process of actually enjoying what this is all about. I think sometimes what happens is we say, okay, this is non-essential. This is something that, you know, you only do when you have money or when you want to look good. So therefore it's no big deal. And that's not really it at all. There's so much more to it. But unfortunately, like, we can't ask for more from other people unless we ask for more from ourselves as an industry. And so I think there's a lot to be said there for sure.
Yeah, it seems like the very, very smart kind of brains in the industry see that and are shouting the loudest, right, about how this is essential and it is so important. But you're exactly right. I hadn't really thought about it like that. And it makes me think, and I'm not going to name any names, but if you look at people that have shifted well and been able to still deliver that importance to the people in their inner circle, as opposed to a big part of the industry that probably went, oh, well, the gyms are shut, I'm going to get a different job. And maybe they're, you know, and listen, you do what you got to do. Like, no judgment. If you got to step away and get another job, that's fine. But it, like you said, right, it shows that importance of, you know, was delivering that service and those acts of service to others that important to you? Could you have found a way to make that work? And many people have, and that's an awesome thing for our industry. But I really love that point. It's amazing.
So, of the people that you train and you educate, Daniel, do you find those gems that end up working for you? Is that how you do a lot of your recruitment for your business?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always looking for, so for me, I look a little bit differently. It's interesting because I've done hiring for many companies and stuff. And I see what they're looking for, and what I'm looking for is different. In fact, I actually don't really care too much about how much education you have when you're coming to the facility. I'm more so looking for the type of person you are, because I find there's two things that needs to happen. First of all, you need to be able to complement the organization. You need to bring something that we don't have. So that's kind of like the first process. But also, you need to be adaptable and coachable. So that's really, I think, the big opportunity there is if you can get someone who's adaptable and coachable, they can grow really, really, really fast. Whereas if you get the ready-made, and I was just having, once again, it's ironic you guys asked this question, I was just having this conversation today again, if you get the ready-made pro, sometimes they come in like a 7 out of 10, but they don't get any higher than that. And so then you got to ask yourself, like, would a 7 out of 10 in any situation ever be enough? And I don't think it's enough for me. Like, I want a 12 out of 10 when I do my test, when I, that's what I'm looking for. Right. So like, that's my thing, is like, I don't want to have to, fight with someone to try to get them to just a 7. Like, I want the opportunity to see them be great, be elite, as we talked about before. So yeah, I'm always looking in courses. I'm always getting opportunity. You can tell so much. I made a post about this, as Gareth mentioned. I made a post about this as well myself, talking about how much you can learn from doing a course or teaching a course and seeing the engagement of the students. I can almost point out who's going to be in the industry in 6 months and who won't, just by having them in the course and how engaged they are with the process, because you can see why they're there and who actually wants to learn and who's just there for the ride.
Yeah, that's so interesting. But I kind of agree, right? Like, knocking around gyms for as long as I have, I'm working in the fitness industry. It's like, hey, here's our new trainer, here's Bob. And you're like, Bob's lasting 1 week.
Yes, that's it. It's not looking good, Bob. It's over, man. That's it. Yeah.
I'm sorry, you're a nice guy, but yeah, it's true, right? You start to see that, I think, when you've been in the industry for a while. And I think what you're alluding to, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you really see that potential in people, the stuff that can't be taught. Right? Mm-hmm. Personality, that willingness even to learn and be curious. Like, there's more. I can be better. Yeah. So there you go. So if you're thinking about being a fitness professional, it's really is that we're looking for. All three of us have been hiring managers at some point, right? That's what we're really looking for, because we can teach you the other stuff. We can teach you the heart and the lungs and cardio training and programming. I can't teach you to be a nice person.
Can't teach you to have a personality.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work. To double off of that, another thing that I say to a lot of students when they're asking me, like, how do you keep clients, is I say people come for you, they stay for your education. So it's backwards. So I think sometimes we put the cart before the horse and we're like, let's get all this education, let's go to all these courses. Now that they have these courses, all the clients are just going to flow in. Here they come. We open the door and there's no clients. So we're like, well, why not? Where are they? They must have came. It's okay, the wrong time zone. They'll be here in an hour. Like, no, that's not it at all. I think there's such an opportunity there to recognize that people are coming for you. Like, they're literally walking in the door. Like, and I'm sure you guys can almost spot on agree. You'll probably laugh when I say this. Do you know how many years I've been in this industry and not one person has ever come in and been like, hey, can you tell me what your educational background is? No one gives a damn at that point. They're like, this guy's dope. I love working with this guy. He's awesome. That's it. And it's so true. As you get really good, people don't care because you're awesome. So I think that sometimes, and this is coming from someone who teaches education, sometimes we get too hard pressed and locked into like a box of, I need to get all these certifications, all this background because I'm going to be really good. And then as Nicky said, they show up to the gym and you can just smell the not going to happen on them. You just know it's not going to work. So it's so important. It's so important that we really, really, really work on who we are. That's what clients are presented with. That's what they're looking for.
Yeah, I was giggling myself a minute ago because it made me. I used to think about when I was last on the gym floor, like pretty regularly. We always had a joke that people was like, you don't seem to, like, we have a new trainer, and people say, oh, have you spent any time with them? And I used to have this like kind of semi joke where I'd be like, no, because they haven't been here 3 months, so I'm not going to speak to them until they've been here 3 months, because they're going to ask me 1,000 questions about how to do everything. I'm going to give them like 3 hours of my time, and then they're going to leave. So that was always my joke. I'm like, nah, they got another month before I talk to them. I'm like, they're just right now. I have so many things to do that. Yeah, it was a kind of half a joke, half not a joke.
There are a few surprises. A few people have caught me out along the way over the years, right? But
right? Like you said,
many.
I love that. You smell it on them. You're like, no, I'm gonna need a few more months from you before that happens for sure.
So, awesome. So top tips for somebody starting to enter the fitness industry. Let's think about it between us. Let's put like a top 5 together just for shits and giggles. Go for it.
I got the first one.
Yeah.
I like what you said, Daniel, about so I'm going to give it a bit of backstory about how we're focused on the qualifications or the certifications that we get when we come in. One thing I would say is look outside the box a little bit. So if you are focused on getting some certifications, yes, you need entry level, 100%. You need to be in, we need to tick the boxes, we need to be insured and safe. Then I would actually look a little outside the box. And this is what I tell coaches to do all the time, is go look at certifications that are about communication. Learn how to communicate first. And I know we think, oh yeah, well, I can have a conversation, all right, I can chat to my buddy in the gym while I'm doing bench press. I'm like, no, you need to learn how to communicate, because if you can't speak to someone, you can't get the needed information out of that person before you coach them. And then, if you're giving them all close-ended questions and it's yes and no's, you don't get anywhere very fast, as I found out 20 odd years ago. So that would always be my tip, is get your entry level and then start to look at how do you broaden your communication skills. That will help you a million times more than, how to do a deadlift. However, that is important too.
Yes, I really like that.
That's my number one. I took it.
Okay, fine, good. Yeah, good.
It's mine.
I would say for number 2, this came to my mind immediately when you guys started talking just about tips in general and like longevity of practice. I'm very direct with people. You guys can see now, like I'm just like right to the point. I think that one of the things that we are missing in our industry is being honest and understanding that while this is a personal training business, or let's say fitness business, it's also the business of personal training. So those are two different things. I think sometimes we get caught on understanding, like, I want to work as a fitness pro, I want to work, as a physio, athletic therapist, chiro, whoever, whatever it is, but I don't want to really understand the business. And so what I would suggest from a tip standpoint is you understand everything about the process for your members. So you understand how they get inducted, how you source the leads, what people say to them when they call them, how they're introduced, what are they presented in terms of pamphlets. Let's say if you're working at another facility, what are they promised before you meet them? These are things you need to know. What's the cost associated with their commitments? These are all things I think that are so important, that as as fitness pros, we don't even address because we're just looking for the end product, but we don't realize there are so many more commitments they have to make before they get to us. There's so many more commitments, and we get caught up in the, oh, well, they weren't good. They weren't serious. They weren't committed, but they made like 14 commitments before they even got in front of you. So was that the issue, or is there something else that we're missing in terms of a gap? And so I think that sometimes we can't be afraid of being able to understand the entire process of how even if you don't do it, like you don't have to sell memberships to understand how a membership process works. You get an idea of how people are being inducted into your space, what people are telling, what people are being told about you. So I think there's a lot of value there in terms of being able to understand that it's a business of personal training or a business of fitness.
Yeah, I love that. And that's always something that I always talk to new people in the industry about, is how there's a massive benefit to your either a facility like yours, or a big box gym that has a great platform for teaching you the business skills, because you can go and get certifications like we said, but are you learning the business, or are you just getting chucked out on the gym floor, or are you just going in as a freelance trainer and here you go, here's the gym, go find some clients? So that's a massive benefit, and the best people that last a long time definitely have those skills. So yeah, I love that. It's a good one. Go on then, we got
don't be a dick. That's mine. No, like in all honesty, like just be human. Be a good human, right? Like,
Yep.
I think that's important, and that kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. You can be a beautiful mind and have all of the wonderful programming, but if you don't know how to talk to people, if you don't truly care, if you're not a good listener, if you've got no time for the chit chat, I don't think this is the job for you. People, like we mentioned, people come for people, and a lot of the time, and we've seen this with the recent shutdowns, a lot of the time people come to the gym to be with other people, to talk, to be social.
Agreed.
It's not all about the workout. So if you can be a real human, right, and have great conversations, meet people where they're at, and be able to perhaps manipulate what you've got going on for that day, because your skill set is there as well, right? Your business, you're good at communicating, then that client is going to stay with you. So be a human, keep it real, don't be a dick.
I like it. And I think that actually leads really well to another one that I have, which I think is so important, which is empathy. And this is something where I think it goes back to the I don't know, the contentious post I made the other week about.
You are really hung up on that.
I know,
right? He's not letting that go.
But what I think is that's the key skill. And sometimes if we come from a different world as an athlete, maybe a fitness, a bodybuilder, something along those lines, or coming in, and not there's anything wrong with that, obviously, but when you come into the industry, it's sometimes you're not in the other person's shoes, and you don't have the skill set to see it from that other person's viewpoint. And that's so important, because how does somebody feel that struggled with their weight, or their physicality, or their athleticism all the way through their life? And sometimes it's hard for many people in the industry, and it doesn't mean you have to go through those struggles to be empathetic. You've just got to sit back and think, where are these person's struggles, right? What have they been, what must that feel like to go through that? And that's such an important thing. And it makes me think about a great lifestyle like seminar I went on a few years back. And we did a really good kind of, like, I did a back and forward with the person tutoring the session, and it was kind of the thing where I went in and said, I'm feeling really bad, coach. I've had a bad weekend. I had a pizza, and I just had a lazy day. And he did a really great job of explaining that that person often is going to get met with, whoa, there's this many calories in that, and da 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 da, and that person doesn't need to hear that. And he just did a great thing where he was like, it's okay, man. He's like, what? He's like, I love pizza too. What did you have on it, more importantly, right? And that's the conversations we need to be having. Because I want to say, I had pizza too. It was awesome. I made my own. Actually, we had pizza tonight. And, I put
Pizza
ham
Friday.
and I put pineapple on it. And people are going to be like, that's wrong. Don't put pineapple on a pizza.
Yeah.
And we do all these things. That's what they need. And then it's to say, hey, it's okay to have pizza, right? We're all going to eat that. And then, dig into that and start to share, that we know what it's like and we understand, or at least you have to try and see it through their eyes and understand it. And again, comes back to communication. So that was my next one. And pizza.
And pizza. All right, number 5, the last one, Daniel. What you got?
So before I get to that, to add to that last point, which I thought was really, really powerful, you're right. There needs to be a level of understanding that this is a process. It's not a project. And so sometimes we get caught in like a project has a beginning and end. So we say, okay, someone, for example, I have a client who just started with me who's morbidly obese, probably started about 4 to 5 weeks ago. They got started and they're like, I'm going to change my diet. I'm going to change all these things. You know how it is whenever I'm going to change, I'm going to drink air and eat water for the next, 12. I got it. And I said nothing because I already know what's going to happen is, you're going to be like, and then you're gone. Right. And so it's interesting because you could see the trending downward of the commitment process over the last few weeks. And in that time period is when you need to be most supportive, because that is the time when they are trying to run from the opportunity, right? They are trying to run away, and you pressing them is the perfect opportunity for them to leave. Like, they like Nikki so much, but if she presses me in a moment when I'm just getting started and I'm weak, it's going to give me the reason why I want to run. There's no reason to. This is a process, not a project. There's no deadline. We're not going to Cabo. We're not going to, we're simply just trying to get through this process. And so I think there's a lot of value to what you guys just mentioned there. And it's just being able to be patient with clientele, as well as empathetic, and understand that there's so many ebbs and flows to this process. And this is why we need to think of it as as you said, Garrett, outside of the box experience, because it's not just this is happening in 3 months, this is happening in 5 months. No, it's just, let's just come in and see where things go, and as things start to pick up, then we can set some hard pressed goals from there.
Yeah, so true.
And then the last one, which is a little bit rougher now that I said that, this one is like going to go opposite everything we just said. But I stress this all the time for this reason. It's actually a really important one. Your clients are not your friends. And I say this all the time, and people get caught up and they're like, oh my God, like, you're horrible. Like, how could you? But I say this with the utmost love, because this happens all the time in the industry. Is we forget that your clients are your clients, and it's a professional relationship, and we start drifting on everything. And I mean, that's everything from simply, as we talked about, showing up on time, counting reps, giving them all of our BS. We come and we just dump our crap on them, thinking they're there to take it. And they're like, they're the ones paying for the session. Why are we giving them all of our stuff? And so I think that it's important we recognize that while, and as I say this, you can be friendly with your clients are not your friends. It's a professional relationship. You have to respect that, because they have made a lot of commitments to be with you in this environment. And I think sometimes we think of money as being the biggest commitment. Money is actually the easiest commitment to make. Like, you don't even feel that. Like, can you imagine if you were sitting there and you just felt the money come out of your wallet? Like, oh, like that. You don't feel it. The money just goes, and that's it. But what we do feel is changing the friend group. We feel changing the diet. We feel the sleepless nights. We feel the depression, that we feel all these things. And so we have to recognize there's a lot of these really, really strong commitments that our clients have been making. And if we don't respect that by respecting the professional boundaries, it's only going to end up in a poor end to a great relationship. And that's not what we want. So I stress that a lot with trainers, like, your clients are not your friends. And it's not to say that you can't be friendly with your clients, but we got to remember your clients are not your friends, are your clients.
Yeah, I love that. And even in situations where, because a lot of us, you've been in the industry, I've been 22 years nearly, you get a lot of people that you develop friendship, like they become, good friends, right? Because you have that. I think what you have to remember, and I love that as a new trainer, you have to be so aware of that. As you progress through your career, you're going to find these personal bonds that happen with people. The skill set you need to develop early on is the ability to know exactly where the line is. Right. Yes. And we have a situation where ours is more group based, so there's a lot more people, across a wider span, and lots of people come into our environment that are possibly our friend groups, even maybe not like super, close friends, but in a friend group. So you need to be able to set that. Yes, I can go drink coffee with you. However, when you step in this session, I'm still going to be doing everything I do for everybody. Right. So
and they respect you more because you do that. It's when you don't set those boundaries, the respect level dwindles, because they say no big deal. We just partied up last night. It's all good. I'll show up when I want, like all good. Like, no, you can't charge me. I know I didn't show. Like, you don't want to, like, it's important that we keep those boundaries, because it comes back to what we talked about, that personal accountability aspect, is we're always trying to ensure that we're holding them to the standard that is what they expect for themselves. Like, they asked us for this, right? So this is what I want from this experience. Okay, I'm going to do whatever it takes, even if it means some days you don't like me, that's fine, right? Like, I'm here to make you the greatest version of yourself possible. And so that's I think there's so much value there.
Yeah, like I tell them all the time, I don't care if you like me or not. We didn't do it.
Yeah.
Every day.
It's actually kind of fun when they swear at you. Hey, let's quickly go through those 5.
All right.
And then I feel like we can just like drop the mic, right? So number 1 was great communication skills. Number 2 was know the business.
Yeah.
Know the business before you come in the business. Number 3 was don't be a dick. Which was more about being a human, right?
Yeah.
Then number 4 was about empathy. And number 5 there, clients are your friend. Clients are not your friends, right? So sorry, my bad.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
it's been a long week. You know,
You're not my friend, any of you.
Yeah, so creating those boundaries and understanding that those professional, right, relationships.
Absolutely.
I think that's really epic. I think, I think there's some real golden nuggets in there that, each of us as individuals have experienced the positive and the negative side, let's say, of just everything we've just spoken about for like the last 15 minutes. So, so there you go. Take all of our knowledge and experience and do yourself a favor, cram up on this stuff before you come into the industry.
Absolutely. I love it. That was a great little, that was a totally unscripted idea. So great work. So I want to go back to something that we came up earlier, and it's because I wrote it down and it's been going around in my head. You touched on earlier, Daniel, about how the education and our clients knowing more about what's going on and what's happening. And I can't remember exactly what you said, but something along those lines, which I'm sure someone will correct me on. But it really struck a chord with me, because I always feel like, and the reason why, as soon as you said that, I thought about the conversations I have sometimes. Someone will send me an Instagram message or shoot me an email and say, I was working out the other day and I could hear you in my head telling me, this and this about whatever it was. And this is someone that maybe was 10 years ago that, trained with me or was in a class or whatever it might be. And it made me really think about how important the education is. And I think we are so, it's so important to us, because we are running group-based training, and as everyone can imagine, there's a lot of online group exercise in general out there. And this is the big differentiator that we have, is that it's live and it's coached, so that's there. There's ability for us to connect to something that somebody needs that we see. So that's why it was so important to me. And I just wanted to dig into it a little bit more and hear your thoughts in a bit more detail about why that's so important, and why you need your clients and people to understand and have that education, and why it's so important to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think one of the big reasons why education is fundamental is because what is really the building blocks to your success. And the less you know, the less likely you are to want to learn more, because you don't know what you know, and you don't know what you could know. And so we get into this place where we are committing, and this kind of, to take this back to a whole nother direction, like just because someone makes a commitment to get started doesn't mean they're ready. Right? Like those are like two different things. Like me having the physical ability to commit to working at the Knock Academy doesn't mean I'm really ready to commit yet. What that comes with are a bunch of different processes to get me there. Some of that is us teaching them the process of getting ready. What does that look like? As we talked about with people from the past, having people who are, let's say, overweight or have a strength goal and they're falling off and coming back. Part of the thing we have to teach them is that it's a process, right? So that's sometimes what we have to teach them there. When we go to working with people one-on-one in a facility setting, even just teaching them the physics or the movement philosophy behind what we're doing sometimes can spark interest in people more than they ever thought possible. I actually get a lot of clients when they work with me that say, man, I've never had anyone explain that. to me like that before ever. Then I get some clients who are like, I really don't care. But you know,
Yeah,
it's just you get what you have. So I think that it's a disservice to not teach them, because if they're ever in a place when they're not there, we want them to be able to take that practical knowledge and be able to apply it into another setting. Like, I don't want their success to be tied to my success. I always believe that a client eventually should be at a point where they don't have to train you, they train with you, they choose to train with you. You get to that point where it's like they don't have to, they choose to, and they choose to because they like the process of working with you, whatever the reason why. But when there's a reliance upon you, are they really growing? And so that's why we spend a lot of time working with our new guys, particularly, and stressing to them the value of teaching their clients their process, not a process, their process of how they look at and they view. Because remember, like, the person is coming to work with them. So what is the way that they look at and they view health and wellness? If you can espouse upon them your process, they are going to be more likely to buy into the process. So that's really why I think there's so much value in education. And I think that it is a really, really, really small piece that a lot of people are missing when I think we're very experience based right now with our training. So we want to give the hardest session, the heaviest, hard, sweat, hurt, burn, go. If you didn't tear your hamstring, it wasn't good enough. Like, like we want to give that type of session. And sometimes we have to understand that exercise is literally science. It's all about having a structured, controlled approach and getting an awesome workout along the way. So if we can find a middle grounds, I think we can build great fitness enthusiasts along the way.
Yeah, it's I always think that, one of the, I think it's a quote or someone, I saw it on social media or something, but how, anyone can make you work hard, right? It's not difficult. I can give you, get anyone listening that think you can't, get up now and run, do high knees for the next 5 minutes. It'll get your heart rate up. You'll feel tired. There's not really a lot of, not a science behind that, right? It's just movement that elevates your heart rate. So yeah, I definitely love that. And we have to understand those parts. And I always talk to, whenever I'm training a strength session, it's a bit slower, it's a bit more controlled, there's more rest. And I was like, this is the stuff that helps you do that other stuff better. Right? Like, that's so important, because if you're strong and you understand it in slow motion, so to speak, when you are doing a high knee or you're doing something that's explosive, you're going to do it so much better. So yeah, that's so important. And when people hear that, it definitely makes a difference, and it stops them skipping rests between their sets, and stops them speeding up tempos and exercises and all those things. So when they understand, they connect to it. Yeah, I really love that. It's so funny. I was kind of sitting there thinking about a lot of the things you said, and I was like, oh yeah, let's see what kind of and you just touched on so many things that I was thinking about. So I love that. Great minds and all that.
I was nodding a lot. I was looking like a bobblehead at one point. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you're like, is she okay? Vibrating there. Yes, because just all the yes, because I think. But no, here's the thing: if you explain the why, then people will buy in. Yeah. Like, and that's for anything, right? The how and the why. Okay, cool, I got this. Rather than just because, or because I should just believe you because you saw somebody else do it. Like, the how and the why is so powerful as a coach. And you're right, I think we skip it. We go from let's do squats to cheerleader coaching. Harder, faster, go, quicker, bigger, right? And then there's where's the middle bit? Like, what muscles am I even working here, dude? Like, we have to give that information. And here's the really cool thing is we want to empower people. For me, fitness is about empowerment and self-respect. We want people to have that power. So when I'm not here, and I say this all the time, you should be able to do this when I'm not here. Right? It's hang on a minute, let me think about it, and do that kind of, like, it's almost like a little check, right? My preliminary check before I do a squat or whatever. So they feel empowered, they feel safe, they know the why, they've got the buy-in, and boom, right? Yeah. Away they go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I love that. Yeah, I love that, Daniel, that you think the same way. So thank you for sharing.
I always laugh when it makes me think when you hear people say, oh, well, the reason I've got a trainer or the reason I have a coach is, so I can just come in and, like, not have to think. I'm like, you got this all wrong. All I'm doing right now is I'm just taking all those barriers and moving them. This is why we created what we created. I'm going to take all the barriers away and make this as easy as it possibly can be. All you have to do is pick up your cell phone, which you're probably holding anyway, and you press the button,
join,
and you join. You go in the app and you join and then there's no barrier. There's literally no barrier. However, don't think that you're going to show up and not be thinking about what you're doing, because I always say to them, I'm in one of those moods today. I'm just going to annoy you the whole time. Tell you about everything 10 times.
Yes.
He's not even joking, honestly. Sometimes even I'm like, just take a breath.
Stop.
Never.
I get it.
Yes.
The biggest compliment is when that, if somebody can go, like you said, it just, that really resonates with me. If somebody can walk away and still do it and do it without me, biggest compliment, right?
Yes.
Like as a coach, great. You learn all that stuff, and you can just, like you said, send me a message 10 years later and say, oh, I was doing a squat the other day and you still remembered how you taught me to activate my glutes or whatever. Great, job done.
Well, that's what Daniel said, right? The whole goal really is that they don't need you.
Yeah,
they
love that.
might choose to still have you as part of their life. But
that would be very nice, by the way, for anyone listening.
You choose. Yes.
Just circling back, right, to what Daniel said, and I think you hit the nail on the head perfectly there, right?
Yeah, I think so. You guys, everything you're saying is like super solid, because it makes me think of my experience when I walk into some larger fitness spaces, and you can always tell when you have a personal trainer or like a group exercise coach or whoever it might be. You can always tell when they're running a class. Why? Because you basically hear them. You hear them. We call them but we call them sometimes the professional counter, right? So we call them the 1, 2, 3. When you walk in and you hear that, immediately you're like, oh my gosh. And you just look at the person, you're like, can you believe this person's investing their time to do this? And I think sometimes that says a lot about the engagement in the process of actually getting them to where they want to go. Like if we're just sitting there, like, I'm pretty sure all these people know how to count to 10. They can figure out how to count to 8. Like they don't need you to count for them for the most part. There's some clients who are like, please just count because I have no idea. So there's a big difference between a personal trainer, a group exercise instructor, a coach, and a fitness professional. And I really try to differentiate those two elements. Personal training, group exercise, coach, yoga instructor, all these things. These to me are all tools. These are all things that are skill sets. We do these things as part of being a fitness professional. I think sometimes we lessen who we are in our impact on the industry by saying, well, I'm a personal trainer. Oh, I'm a group fitness coach, or I'm a yoga instructor. Like, yeah, you do that, but think about it. You're also an educator. All of us are the best ones are educators because we teach daily. Like we influence daily. We hold people accountable daily with all of our practices. And so I think there's a lot of value there with what you guys are saying in being able to really drive home the value of why we're doing what we're doing. And that comes from everything to why we're showing up, why we're going home at a certain time, why we're resting on certain days, why we're resting, as Gareth said, why we're resting in between certain sets. Like just understanding like off stimulus rest, like what that means to the overall potential for the goal. So if you can really like be able to understand that you're so much greater than just counting reps as in the fitness industry, you're going to be able to give a much better value for your sessions.
Yep. Like I tell my clients, they ask me to count. I'm like, you can count yourself. I got other shit to worry about.
Yeah.
My clients know. They're like, what number are you on? I'm like, I have no idea because I am just coaching you so hard right now.
I don't want you to break your neck, so I'm not worried about the.
Yeah. I always say, like, if you do 10 or you do 13, I don't really care at this point. Like, I'm worried that you're doing it right. Yeah, but that's such a good tip.
There's a time and place for it, right?
Yeah.
Let's just say that, right?
That's what stopwatch is for.
Yes.
But I always say, and that's so important for anyone listening, any aspiring coaches or anyone that's in the industry and then wants to become a better coach. It's so important. Like if you've got time to count for your clients, and they better be perfect is all I'm saying.
This is my favorite counting that I see at the gym for people who aren't watching this on YouTube. I have a phone in my hand. 1.
Yes.
It looks great. 2.
Yes.
10. Okay, good. Now let's do deadlifts.
Yes. Yes. So don't be that coach.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, watching your
People
phone.
out there.
Oh, goodness.
So true.
Oh man, let's shift the focus a little bit. I want to talk about your evolution from being a fitness professional, Daniel, because you know it's kind of similar to our path that you get to a point in your career where you want to, I guess, step it up, leave a legacy, whatever you want to call it, and then create something of your own. So you mentioned that you have Only the Strong.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I would really love, if you don't mind sharing, like kind of seeing your process, you know, how it happened, how you became a business owner, as well as a fitness professional, how and why you took the leap into, you know, starting your own business, and maybe just maybe that might influence some others to be curious and perhaps, you know, start to move on in their career progression.
For sure, yeah. So it was kind of a weird, I guess, directional. I started off. I'm a high-level athlete my whole life, so I played basketball and football at the university level,
Cool.
and then I also play football professionally. And so I've done a little bit of everything throughout my career, but I didn't really know much about health or wellness. In fact, when I was in university, I actually used to get kicked out of our football workouts because they'd never really put in much effort to exercise, and the coaches would hate it because I just had great athleticism. I just didn't really care too much. I didn't actually start exercising until I left university, which is crazy to think about it, because I started exercising when I was doing the football combine. So it's like the like your resume for a regular job. You go and you lift, and they say, "Oh wow, you know, you're so great," and then they potentially sign you. So when I was preparing for that, that's when I actually met a high-level manager at one of the corporate facilities, and they said, "You should try this personal training thing out." So when I got in, it was like amazing because it was one of those things where it allowed me to just be vocal and interact with people. And I was learning at such an alarming rate. And I just remember that I shot up the ranks there. I got into management super quickly. I even opened a few of the gyms. But I always got to a point where I remember I was like 22 years old and I was making like $150,000 a year. As 22 years old and just doing personal training, just like no big deal. I had no conception of what money was. If I knew then what I knew, I would have saved a lot more of that money at that time. But now it's a whole different thing. Now I'm like, oh my gosh, if I get there in my career, I'll be happy. You know, that's it. But ironically, I just remember I would always be going through the process of getting members started, and in my mind knowing deep down inside I was lying to them, because I knew that everything I said was true, everything about our interaction was true, but I know I was about to hand them off to someone who really had zero background in any sort of skill set to be able to work with them and bring them to where they wanted to go. But I knew, because it was part of this infrastructure, that in order for me to get to my success and make money and all these types of things, I had to continue doing this. So I did that for several years, and then it started to wear on me. And I worked in downtown Toronto, so I worked with some of the best fitness minds around. But I started noticing from talking to them that they had the same mindset, except they were like 10, 15 years older than me. So I kind of had this like moment where I was like, am I going to do this for 15 years and be as miserable as these guys are? Like, they're so miserable. And it's like every time we meet once a month in the manager meeting, they're always complaining. And I directly, there's a high level manager. He works at a King Liberty area. And I remember we would always drive home. And it was the saddest story. Like I felt like I need to hug him. He would complain. He'd be so sad driving home. And one of the best gyms in Toronto was just so depressed about having to do the same thing over and over again. And finally, I just said to myself, we won a club award one day. And I just said, I had enough. And I called my boss the next day and I said, I'm going to quit. And I remember him saying distinctly to me, like, what? What are you going to do? And I remember when he said, what are you going to do? It validated that I should have left a long time ago. And the reason why is because if we believe that this one corporate facility is the be all and end all for fitness, we've already glass ceilinged ourselves. So I was like, all right, you know what? I'm out. He's like, what are you going to do? I said, I have no clue. I really didn't. I'm very ambitious like that. I'm just going to quit and just kind of figure it out. So I quit. I left. And I basically just grinded and kind of put things together. And I started teaching courses at different locations. There's a facility here in Toronto down near the water called Studio Flux, this random like aerialist facility. You guys don't know, like the people with the twirly things hanging from the ceiling. I was the first place I rented to like teach my little seminars and stuff. So people would be coming in, I'd be like, don't worry, nothing to see here, go right upstairs. And upstairs, and people were like legs spitting in the, and it was just like, but you know how it is, you're building it up and you just kind of get. So I put in a lot of work and a lot of time, and I was able to open my first facility at that point. And I didn't know where it was going to go. I just knew that I had a different impression for how health and wellness was supposed to go. And so since then, we've obviously been able to open 2 more facilities. So it's been a great run for me. And that's really my transition. Is I went from corporate to the boutique world into owning my own facility. And it wasn't easy. But I did it all by myself. It was self-funded, no, investors, no partners, none of that type of stuff. I built it. I took my time with it, and I'm happy because it's a great representation of what I think health and fitness is all about. And then I get to meet people like you, who I probably never would have met if I had stayed where I was, because we were all like a really closed family that only believed that we could only learn from each other. It's kind of like some weird, like you can edit this part out if I say, but it's kind of like a weird like Scientology thing, where everyone's like in that one weird room. We're we're all together here, like you can't come in here, this room, we're so great in here, but you can't come in. That was how it was. And so when I left, I was like, wow. When I left, I was like, holy smokes, the world is so much better in the fitness industry not being in that weird room. So it's just a different approach, and I've excelled ever since.
Kudos.
Definitely
to you,
not
man.
editing that out.
No, that was brilliant. Like that was just like the best story.
Yes.
I felt like I was almost watching a movie, and now I need to know more. Like I just want to binge watch this. No, but seriously, man, like, do you know what I thought when you were telling your stories? Everything you just said about being an epic personal trainer and getting into this industry, it's kind of like the same path, right, that you followed. It would have been so easy to give up.
Yep. Absolutely.
Right? But you put in the work and you lived in the gray, that weird space, right? Between no money and $500 million, right? You put in the graft, you put in the work. It would have been easy to say no and gone back to your weird room. Right?
Exactly. Back to the weird room. You're right.
But you challenged yourself. You were so curious that you wanted to see what you were capable of, at the risk of it all. And I think that's really amazing and worth commending. So congratulations, Daniel. Like, great job.
Thank you. Just to add to that point, now that you mentioned this, like one thing I didn't mention that happened in the middle, and I think sometimes we see the triumph but not the struggle. It's like you go on social media and you see all the highlights of people's lives. You don't realize there's a lot that goes on that doesn't exist in that world. In between corporate fitness and opening my own facility, I decided to really get back to the ground level and try out the boutique fitness. Like go to one of these gyms that always talks about how they're better than any other gym, like come work. So I decided, let me go there. So I remember I used to get up every day at 4 a.m. and I used to go all the way out to Mississauga because I didn't have a car. So I had to like make sure I could get a ride, however I could get all the way out to Mississauga so I could get there to work in this boutique gym facility. And I remember putting in all this time and effort. And I went from making, as I mentioned, $120,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. They were paying me like $20 an hour at this point to work. And I'm voluntarily quit this job to go here. And I don't live there. I don't have a car. And I go there 6-7 days a week to make this happen. And I remember when I was leaving, because I was like, as I was there, I was building my whole vision and stuff. And the manager sat down with me and he was really frustrated because he obviously saw I had skills that I could contribute to the business. And he said, like, why are you leaving? Like, what's going on? And I said, well, I have this idea that I need to fulfill. And he said the thing, I've actually quoted this on my social media many, many, many times. And he said, you know what? That's great. But have you ever taken a business course? I'm like, no, it's just have this idea. It's like a desire, something I want to fulfill. And he said, that's awesome. But let me just tell you this. Ideas don't make entrepreneurs. And he told me that, and it was crazy to me because he kind of taught me something. He didn't teach me a thing the entire time I was there, but in that moment, he taught me that you have to recognize that at the end of the day, regardless of how hard the situation is, how tough it might be, how long the road feels like, how bumpy it is, at the end of the day, you got to bet on yourself. You got to bet on yourself and you'll never lose. And I'm a living testament to that. Every single opportunity that I could have, messed up on, or it could have not went well, and I was able to land on my feet. So it's so important that you bet on yourself. And that's the last thing that I want to just add in there.
Mm-hmm. Powerful message.
Agreed.
A couple of things that I'd love to touch on. First of all, do you have any tips for anyone kind of tuning in that's thinking, hey, I want to start a business, I want to be an entrepreneur, but they get, this is lots of people, and I want to know if you suffered with this and maybe how you overcame it. The kind of, just that like imposter syndrome and anxiety around, not having that income, what happens if it fails and I start a business? And this is something I always dig into and ask people because it fascinates me, and it's something that definitely is a cycle that I go through. Mm-hmm. Did that happen to you in that process? Did you get stuck in that place, and how did you get out of it?
Yeah, I think so the imposter syndrome. It's funny. We just ran an online course and one of the girls said that. And it was the first time I heard that in a while. And now that you're saying it, I'm like, wow, it's great. I guess this is something that people are still thinking about, because I've heard it in the past, but I haven't heard it in a while. But I think there's a great validity around what you know, and understanding that it's not about what you know, it's about mastering what you know. So I think sometimes we get caught up in trying to learn the world. Like, it doesn't matter if I know a little bit of everything. I want to know a lot about a little bit. And that's where I am. I'm not the most knowledgeable fitness professional in the world. I couldn't tell you about the shin angle and the twist and the three fibers and all this stuff. Like, that's not my background. But what I do know is I do know A, B, and C, and I'm really good at that. And so sometimes I find that professionals getting into, or aspiring professionals getting into the industry, get overwhelmed by the fact that they don't have Nicky type knowledge, they don't have Gareth type knowledge, they don't have Daniel type knowledge, they don't have John type knowledge. They get overwhelmed by that, and they don't realize they don't need that type of knowledge in order to be successful. They have to know what they know and know it really well. That's it. And sometimes the strength of us is knowing when we don't know something. That actually is even more powerful, because we get more results when we're able to say, you know what, maybe I don't know this. Let me refer out. Let me ask a colleague. Let me do some research. And that's how we can get better overall.
Yeah, I love that. I actually was on the CanFit Pro panel last week. This came up as a question, and we were talking about podcasting. And
this is at the conference.
The CanFit Pro conference. Yes, I was just, because I forget that the microphone's on. We're recording. And now I've lost my train of thought.
You're at the CanFit Pro conference.
Yes.
Podcasting
so we were talking about podcasting, and the question was, how do you start? Like, people are like, I've got an idea, I've really wanted to do it, but I don't want to do a podcast because I don't know what I'm doing, yada yada yada. And I was just like, you know what? The most important thing that what I shared is, yes, there's going to be someone doing a better podcast than you, with better audio, with better technology, with better content, with better guests. In the industry, there's going to be a better trainer than you that knows more about a squat or knows more about this type of training. Like, as long as the quicker you accept that there's going to be someone out there that knows more than you and is better than you, the quicker you'll get started with it. And I think that just, all kind of ties in, and it was just so impactful. And, and then someone else on the panel followed up with a comment, which was, there's all those people are out there, yes, but none of them are you. Mm-hmm. And that for me was like, I was answering the question, and I'm like, no, she should have answered this question. So there you go.
Just do you, right? Yeah. I think there's so much power in that, and that's not easy to find. I'm sitting here at 41 years old, and I'm just about happy to do me, right? And actually land in it and be like, I'm kind of comfortable to say that, right? I'm okay to say no. I feel okay to say no. And I also feel okay to say yes. And I think some of that does come with age, with wisdom, and, certain life experiences. But I think that's a great message. And that's kind of a message that we've kept throughout, right?
Yeah.
It's just be you, be a great human, right? Stay true to yourself, do what you do well, build on your knowledge and education.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just be the best version of you.
Yeah, agreed, for sure.
So I've got one more thing I want to talk about, because it's something that's really important to me. You've spoke a lot about, maybe not directly, well, directly and indirectly throughout the episode, about work ethic.
Yeah.
And I'm intrigued because this is something that comes up a lot for me, and it's actually something I credit my dad with in my life, is that he was always big on that. And there was many things that, there's lots of gaps in him and who he was, but one thing he always showed me was that work ethic was important, and that you showed up and you did it, and it was a non-negotiable, regardless of if you didn't like the people you worked with or the environment you were in. And obviously you could make changes in those things, but until that time you showed up and you did it. I'd love to hear where your influences in life helped you create that personal value of work ethic. And it's obviously important to you, so where did that come from? Was it from your sport background? Was it from your upbringing? And share a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that there's a lot of layers to the concept of work ethic, because it's funny. I have we have a wide range of members that come to our facilities, and one particular member of mine that I'm thinking about now that you've asked this question, he is what I would call a serial investor. So he is somebody who has made his success off of investing in the real estate market and basically doesn't work at all. And it's interesting because when we speak, we come from different sides of the world, but we always meet in the middle because we have similar viewpoints. And I think that growing up, and I can speak for my family unit, growing up, our families were taught that working harder was better. So a lot of my family members grew up in the warehouse, working on the conveyor belts, and they're doing the mail industry and so on and so forth. And it was working harder was better. The more work you put in, the better you're going to get, and all of these things. And I start to realize now that unfortunately the way that the world works, harder. In fact, if you look at some of the hardest workers, harder is not better. In fact, some of the hardest workers are actually getting the least out of life. And so when I talk about work ethic, it's not so much the length of your work. It's something that Gareth mentioned at the beginning, but it's the quality of your work. So we want to put out quality in quantity. If we can do those things together, I think there's a great opportunity there. And I'm trying to shift the narrative in my family, because my family thought I was insane for opening a business as well. They thought I was insane for looking at the concept of generational wealth. They thought I was insane for this because they were so used to showing up and doing your 9 to 5 or your 9 to 8 or your overtime or whatever it was, and being content with working really hard. And so that's kind of where work ethic came, as I realized there's a gap between, we're not all born, unfortunately, we're not all born in the same playing field. That's just the way it goes. Some of us have been born with greater opportunity than others, and we have to be able to recognize that and understand that. And so until we impart work ethic into our process, we're never going to be able to change our standing. We're never going to be more than what someone else is telling us we're worth. And so I think there's a lot of value there, in the sense that, yes, my family did give me a lot to look for, but almost in the opposite. I almost looked at them and said, okay, you know what? I see they've done great things. They came here, they grew a life. They were able to do all these awesome things. They were able to get jobs, integrate with society. But now I see they got here. I got to take the baton here. I went to university, I graduated, I got to take it here. So work ethic is different than work effort. And I think sometimes when we put in a lot of effort, we're getting away from the ethic process. So for me, that's really where I've got it from, is being able to take that family lineage one step further and not let everyone down that came before me. That's really what I'm looking for.
Yeah, and that's such a great,
That's great.
It's great, right? It's such a great example of taking things, like I said, right? You learn things that are great about, the influences on you, you impart them. And I think it always relates to me to parenting the same way. We take the great things, but we also are able to look at the gaps in maybe the way we were brought up and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to adjust that and do it differently, like you said. And that is, for us, building maybe more of a lifestyle business where we've got great work ethic in what we do, but we have so much more around that than maybe a generation or two back. So I really love that. There's some deep thought for everyone today.
Yeah.
Yes.
And time shifts and time moves on, right? Yeah. And there are, the world changes, there are different opportunities now, right? And more education around life, let's just say that, let's just keep it very generic, and people in life, and how, and also I think just the expectations have shifted, right? I could hear very similar words that you were using, I would describe my family, right? Like my dad always worked overtime, shift work, night work, right? All of those kind of things. And I think that does set you up for a great base,
Mm.
right? Like you get it, you understand, and then you just want to evolve from that. So
How can I do this better?
how can
Right?
I do this better,
Yeah.
right? Be respectful of where I've come from, but how can I evolve and do better, and then just continue to pay that forward, right? I think that's really great.
Love it. Cool. So one more thing I want to give you a chance to talk about, Daniel, is obviously we're recording a podcast, and the podcast world is one that supports one another very, very well. Something I've learned the last couple of years. So, and I know you have a podcast. So, do you want to just share with the listeners a little bit about your podcast, what you talk about, what the content
Yeah.
is, where to find it, and anything else that you wanted to share before we wrap up the show?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So my podcast, first of all, is called Real Raw Recorded. So the podcast really is just me talking about like everything we talked about today and just kind of going off on long soliloquies about it. So it's really free flowing. Sometimes it's pretty offensive, but hey, you know what? That's life. You know, you can turn it off if you want. I think the reason why I started it is because years ago, I thought to myself, I need to leave an imprint on the world, give something back for all of the experiences I have and all the thoughts that I have. But years ago, I was I don't know if it was afraid or scared or didn't have the time, whatever it was, I just didn't do it. And then finally, I got it one day and I just said, let's do it. Let's try it. And so if you are someone who's looking for an unfiltered look at fitness, wellness, and life, then you can tune into Real Raw Recorded. It's released every Thursday at 6 p.m. And you can find it on all the major streaming platforms. That's your Apple, your Google, all the other ones. I don't even know. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. You can check it out.
We will put it in the show notes too,
Yeah,
so you can literally
absolutely.
just click in there and find it, which will be super useful for everybody. Love it. Always like to support other podcasts and get other people listening and building that audience because there's a lot out there. It's like a needle in a haystack, so it's always good to hear directly about the show. Is there anything else you wanted to share before we wrap it up?
No, I just wanted to say, first of all, for you guys, thank you so much for inviting me on. And I love seeing what you guys are doing. I think that, I shared this with Nicky in the past, I think there's such a value to being able to taking a risk and, being able to kind of put yourself out there. And I think there's so many people in your life that probably appreciate you for this more than what you know. They'll never say it, but you are literally leading the charge of aspiration. And there's so much in that. You're inspiring through aspiration because you're doing such great things with your industry and your business. And I just wanted to say thank you for making me a part of that for the last hour and a bit. It's been awesome being able to join in and see you guys do your thing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm right back at you, right? You're leading the charge too. And, I think this is what's great about the fitness industry is it seems like a huge industry, but it's actually really quite small, right? And and generally speaking, we're all great people. We all like to support one another, right? Because we're all spreading the same message. We're all in it for the same reason. So we really wanted to celebrate you as well, Daniel. Know that. That's why we wanted to invite you onto the podcast to tell the world and our listeners about you as well, because you're doing great things as well. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, guys.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. Thank you for listening, tuning in. I know you got a lot from this show today and learned some stuff. Please share it with someone you love and care about. Get that message out there because I know there's some impactful stuff, especially if you know a coach, a trainer, or someone looking to get into the industry. This will be a great episode for them to tune into. And if you can, head over to Apple, leave us a review if you're enjoying the show because those reviews really help to get the message out there to bump us up in the ranking so more people see what we are talking about. And that is all for today. We will catch you on the next episode.